live in 5. So we're just we're kind of having an eventful day today with Adalie's Rights, having to travel.
Well, here's the thing. Now, Adalie's Rights was the LLC.
Okay.
And then when I started the nonprofit, it became Adalie's.co. But I kind of do business as Adalie's, just Adalie's.
Okay.
So Adalie's Right was kind of like helped us get this going, I guess. And then now it's just, because everyone knows Adalie's as just Adalie's. And so now we're just doing Adalie's.
Okay. So we have been advocating together for about, 15 years?
Yeah, Madison would have been 4. She was 4. But I think we didn't really start advocating until when they took Raleigh in 2014.
So that's when the nonprofit was made. So today we're just trying to gather more moms together that were in jail for different reasons, because of family court, or created criminal court jailings to assist them to help in family court, like create gain by, putting the mom in jail to essentially be able to then go take the children from the mother. So here's the list of the things that we would need from you if you want to be in this. Is it a documentary?
It's more, I think it's going to be used as part of an article in maybe Davis Vanguard, which is in California. It's a news outlet that a lot of journalists put content into. And so once we get all the stories and put the content together, then we'll send it to them, and then they'll determine how they put everything together.
So AP Media is going to help with the content?
Yes. Aiden with AP Media.
Okay. So we're going to get the content of everybody's stories, these moms that have been jailed and treated like criminals, to essentially help with gaining access to the children, or in financial gain. Some people their children were even aged out, but that happened to them so that the spouse or significant other could take all the financial assets while they were jailed.
Yeah. Okay, so the content that's relevant, we're using people's emails to make sure that it's a valid, like for tracking purposes. And I think some of the most important pieces are the judges' names, because right now, with the group that's in Virginia that's already filing lawsuits, all of those moms that have grouped together all have the same judge. So right now, some of the people whose stories we started collecting, we have a couple that are international, 2 separate right now that are international, and then we have different moms from across the country. So I think that if we can get, kind of like Virginia has done, once we get some cases, then we can focus on those states with those judges, specific judges, so we know what judges are focusing on jailing moms to take their kids. And then I know each state, the laws are a little different. So I was, the warrant for example, in my case, with my youngest daughter, the warrant for me was issued in Ohio, but I was taking my LSAT exam in Pennsylvania. So that's how they were able to fraudulently say that I had kidnapped my child, because when I was in another state, they issued a warrant for my arrest. But actually, the entire thing was fraudulent, because my little girl's dad had went to a state like hours away from where anyone had ever lived and filed for custody, and then had a hearing where I wasn't present, and that judge gave him an order for custody, and then he used it to say I kidnapped my youngest daughter.
And it was felony kidnapping charges.
Yeah, so in Ohio, the law there is that when these abusers help use it, they use the kidnapping charges, but they said, like in Ohio, it's felony kidnapping. So each state, they call it something a little different, depending on the state.
And I think it's worse if going on vacation and claim that you didn't tell them even though you did. Things like that. There's a lot of stories like that. I even have someone from Cabarrus County that recently told me their story. She has the text messages where she told her ex-husband that they're going to this place out of town at a different state, blah, blah, blah. And then that ex-husband sent DSS, and sometimes it's not even jailing at that point, but they sent DSS to another state, and they sent them to the hotel they were at and all this other things. So it's a big thing about trying to get this social services involved in multiple states. Even Yolanda and James, they had that problem happening with them between Ohio and North Carolina, where it was like state to state collusion, essentially.
Yeah. So right now, important information to get are the judges' names, because we need to find out what judges are doing this all
email
the time.
judges' names, county that you're in, state you're in.
Yeah. Now the state, not only the state where you're in, but also the state where maybe the order was created. So if you've always lived, like in my case, my older two kids, I had joint custody with their dad in Mecklenburg, North Carolina. And so then my little girl's dad actually went to Wilmington, which was 4 hours away, to get a custody order. And I had been living in Ohio, but sharing custody with my first ex-husband, with my older kids through North Carolina in Mecklenburg County. So that jurisdiction piece was important. So not only is the state where your case was heard, but the state where, the things are happening. So we have those two separate components, so we can make sure that we know where the order was created and where you're actually living, where you have residency. Then all the lawyers that were involved. So at the time, did you have a lawyer? And if you did, then their content, but if you didn't, were you pro se, and then maybe you had to get a lawyer? Because a lot of people, in my case, I didn't have an attorney because there was no custody case.
And it's two separate, so your lawyer and then the opposing counsel's lawyer. So just make sure you're not putting the opposing counsel's lawyer in your spot for your lawyer, because it says lawyers, but make sure there's a spot for your lawyers and a spot for the opposing counsel, because you don't want them all in one line.
And then the list says the first motion that was filed or received in the case. So, for example, in my case where my youngest daughter was taken, there was no motion that existed, at least to my knowledge. But then once he was able to get, the fraudulent custody order, and then he got had me arrested, then I had to get an attorney. But not only then, my first ex-husband used that to say, oh wait, she might kidnap these kids too. So then I had to get an attorney in that jurisdiction.
So that's what we have in common about the collusion between the two ex-husbands. My two ex-husbands in Cabarrus County actually had the same lawyer, Jay White, and we're doing the same exact thing. He was trying to help get the second one off of criminal charges. My first ex-husband was trying to help my second ex-husband out, and then turning around and attacking me. But there was no proof of anything different. He had 2 criminal charges of assault on a female. He's in jail for 6 months. He's walking around the jail naked, painting the walls with poop, the floors with poop, literally beat up a police officer. But none of that was used. None of the actual records of what would happen in jail, or the actual records of even his psych evaluations, things like that. Even in the psych evaluations where he admits all of these things, were used as evidence in the court. Instead, it's my ex-husband says.
I went to court with you after your second ex had been arrested and all that happened. You requested all the records. You took them to court, and I remember this because you were trying to submit the evidence that you already had on file, on the record, and the judge refused to let you submit that evidence because it had some of the stuff that Brad had did, but the judge didn't say this. So you were trying to let them know, look, this evidence is on, you were trying to submit it onto the record. like the different details. I think I can't remember exactly, but then the judge was like not letting you submit certain. I guess
they don't let the criminal charges be used. They don't let the actual evidence be defended. So like, but they used the made up evidence from the other party as relevant facts that were never defended with the truth. Like, never allow the truth to come to surface. Even with the last taking of my older kids after I got remarried, you know, I've never gone to trial and presented evidence to defend myself. It was just, this is what he's saying has happened, and I have the consequences of his proof. And that's what they're getting away with is now, you know, the Hucks is 3 years later. They've never gotten to defend themselves. Now
with their case, and here's what I find very, like, you know, the big corruption component with that case is that even though they claimed that, you know, the dad, he was charged, and then not only was he charged, he was convicted of abuse, but she never was. But she had the kids taken from her, and she's being forced to be supervised. But there were never any charges of her abusing any of the kids or doing anything wrong. But because she was married and stayed married to him, that she's being forced to be supervised, and she can't see the kids. And the youngest two, she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
Because they took them from both of them, not just from him.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, and even though he was convicted, it was, you know, based on
just hearsay.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Literally, they never got to defend themselves. He never should have been convicted. It was like a pinky finger, and they said that
they take one side of the story.
Yep. And you could see videos of the hand, of the physical hand of the child,
because we saw
their
the
hand
videos
like this, and that nothing, no bruising, no dislocation, no nothing. There was a tiny little crack in the finger, like a little hairline crack, and it was from pinching the finger in the grocery cart, or the cart, like a grocery cart. It was those carts that you pull around. Yeah. But there was no evidence that he harmed her. But and it wasn't even it wasn't like abuse where it's a shaken baby. It wasn't like beat up. It wasn't like a big large, you know, bone that was broken. It was like, so essentially they do it both ways, where they're charging child abuse and creating these child abuse and neglect and saying people are emotionally harming their children, all this stuff by made up things.
And they make it impossible to defend yourself. So what they're doing is they're creating one side of the story and not allowing the opposing side to submit their evidence.
Right.
And so that comes to our next piece.
So
that's
here's
important.
how you submit your evidence here's how you get your story out is by videoing it, by telling your side of the story, by getting these components with all your information, and by listening to a man, you know, this person that's getting these stories. I mean, he's a, you know, reputable producer, I guess. Also,
well, actually, that's going to be with
farther
these
down the road.
Well, no, these stories are actually going to go to. This is going to be a woman that's ultimately, I think she's going to be the one that's writing the story.
Oh, writing the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now the other component we put on the questionnaire is court cases associated. So like civil court, criminal court, district, family, juvenile, and then agencies involved. So you more than likely, once family court has got one of the, you know, I guess parents have filed and done something, whether they've, you know, like I said in my second case, he went and obtained a fraudulent custody order, but he went after that and created fraudulent criminal charges. So the question says court cases associated. You have civil court, which is the family court. You have criminal court. So in my case, I would check civil court. I would check criminal court, district court, the district family court. Then we have juvenile court, because how they were able to do that in my second case was they used the juvenile court system. So they used the same judge in the juvenile court and transferred over to the family court. So they took those criminal charges of my federal kidnapping charges when my daughter had been with me since birth. So all of these So it doesn't just become
So
just family court.
in my case, the top criminal lawyer in Cabarrus County is Jay White, and he was deeming his client Brad Urban in and out of competency 3 times in 3 years to get out of criminal charges, but yet then testifying in court that he was competent to have children. So how is that even, like, how can you be saying things in the court of law in one court and then going to a different court and having a whole different testimony? So you can't say this person's crazy, out of his mind, gonna harm himself and harm other people to get him out of criminal charges, but then go to the family court and say, oh, he's capable of being around children. How is that even legal to even
use
go
the
from court
courts
to court
against each other
and have a whole different story? Like, they should cross paths. You should be able to use the testimony from one court to the other. You should be able to use evidence from one court to the other.
And then in family courts doing the same thing. They're breaking your case up to say you have child custody, child support, equitable distribution. Those are 3 separate courts. Those are not even, like, so parents may think, oh, we're getting divorced. Or, for example, my first case, I was like, okay, I'm getting divorced. But, sorry. But then I'm just like, I want to address the child, like my children. I want to make sure that my children are where they need to be. Let's look at child custody. But then the courts were more worried about, wait a minute, how much money do you have? How much money does he have? And then that's where the equitable distribution, and that's another court.
And I literally had 3 different lawyers, 3 different situations where they found out how much money I had in the bank. The next week said I have to give them exactly that amount of money or they will not continue my case. One man, Gregory Hunt, I had already given him $30,000 over a 3-month period of time, and it hadn't even been 3 weeks. And he found out that I had $25,000 and said, if you do not pay me that full $25,000, I won't show up to court. He hadn't done anything for the $30,000 I had already given him.
Yeah. Now,
Like,
I talked to a mom.
They did that when we went to court.
Yours, yes. I took him to traffic.
Left. The guy was like, I need to go to the bathroom.
In the middle of his hearing, he said, wait, I have to go to the bathroom. I said, this isn't normal.
And then you saw him walk out, peek back in the courtroom, talk to somebody, leave, do it again, and then come back in and read like the exact number that was in Mom's bank account, and that was the fee we had to pay.
Yeah, that day.
They can look up your bank account.
Well, and they're not supposed to. So actually, they do.
They did it, and they said that day that in February, I had $5,000 in that bank account, and they said you have 30 minutes to go get that $5,000 out of your bank account and bring it here to pay that lawyer Jay White, or you go to jail today.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's like all the. Now then, here's another question we have. It says, does a no contact order exist in this case? Now in my case, they created a no contact order in the form of retaliation once I started filing complaints.
But it can't be indefinite. Like, the no contact orders only last a year.
Exactly. And here I am 10 years later.
Yeah.
With a no contact order, and for what? There's a charge of federal kidnapping, of which my child had been with me since the day I gave birth to her.
Yeah, and you already, the federal kidnapping is off, gone. You weren't, you're not charged it now.
Exactly.
You were
the
never
case
convicted.
was closed.
You were
The
never
case was
convicted of
closed,
it.
and I just found that out recently, that they closed the case. So I don't even have nothing exists in my case right now as in that custody order, the no contact, none of that. But then, like in your case, then you got a gag order, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
a gatekeeper order.
And a gatekeeper order.
Where I couldn't actually file anything for myself. But actually the gag order and the gatekeeper order are not valid, because they actually gave them to me while I had an open Supreme Court case. So I had an open Supreme Court case
so again,
for
not
over a year.
Not overlapping.
And they cannot file things on me in district court while I have an open Supreme Court case in retaliation. They claim my Supreme Court case was closed, but what was actually closed was his attempt to dismiss my Supreme Court case was dismissed.
And then none of these issues are being addressed. So they're using what they call reunification and mediation. They're saying, oh, these are the services that we use to help clean up your case and get things straight. But they're actually none of all these services do are prolong the case, force the litigants or the parents to pay for a service that they're ordering that's not even necessary. Like, for example, they'll make parents do psychiatric evaluations, but they never use the psychiatric evaluations.
Yeah.
Now, here's the last question in our questionnaire says, how do you believe the court could best assist in resolving your case? You know, because there are so many problems, like some of the things that we're talking about. And so I put, for example, were you prevented from submitting evidence? What was the last time you had communication with your child? And then, are there any concerns and or issues with your case? And this is something I feel that if parents were able to have an advocate, not a guardian ad litem, because right now, the way that guardian ad litems work, or they function, is they are working for the judge. So they're not truly working for the parents. And so if a parent had an advocate or someone that could actually speak on their behalf and say, here's what's happening right now in my case. You know, like in my case, I've been 10 years of no contact with my child, and no one will help. There's no system. I have filed lawsuits in every jurisdiction over the years. And now it's 2024. It's December 2024. The last lawsuit that I filed was 2022. And so I've been filing, like, depending on what, because issues continue to arise. And so I'm at the point now to where, okay, you know, I'm reaching out to other parents. No one's getting recourse. Everyone's children are aging out. My oldest is 20.
Yeah.
My middle child is 18. And I started in family court in 2007 when my oldest was 4. I never was able to get that order changed. Nothing, even though the order itself was full of lies and inaccuracies. It was 10 pages of stuff that attorneys just write in there.
Yeah.
And that's what these
even
court
after
orders
the
are.
judges will sit on stand, like even Christy Wilhelm sat on stand and said, I never have to pay child support in Cabarrus County, this, that, and the other. And like, we still have joint custody, but he had more physical custody than I did, and blah, 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 blah. They went to child support court right afterwards and got me an order to pay him $2,800 a month in child support. So even though the judge ordered that from the stand at the end of her trial, it doesn't and they don't follow through or even write half of what they ordered. The same thing happened with the Quadro. That $70,000 that I had to pay in equitable distribution to the man that beat me up. Part of it was supposed to be a retirement account. Well, his lawyer didn't want to use the retirement account, so he just omitted that part from the order. So then that's how I got in contempt of court, because part of that $70,000 was a retirement account. And I paid everything except for the amount of the retirement account, but I got a criminal conviction or a criminal
So everything ties back to money.
charge.
And then the courts are essentially creating criminal charges, but there's no actual crimes occurring.
Yeah.
And like, I have never, again, I was charged with federal kidnapping. I've never killed anyone. I've never hurt anyone. I've never been charged with hurting anyone. None of my kids there's never been anything like that, yet I have not been allowed to have any contact with my now 14-year-old for 10 years. And the courts refuse to remedy, and there's no remedy. Lawsuits don't remedy. Going to the administrative office of the courts, filing complaints with whoever. There are different avenues for filing complaints. Then there's organizations such as Violence Against Women Act. They have a variety of resources that are supposed to be available to victims, and yet none of the victims are able to utilize the resources to get recourse.
So the problem is they have to follow the law. Like the judges, the attorneys, they have to follow the
They're
VAWA,
they're
the
supposed
Violence
to.
Against Women's Act. And this, like, there was $6 million given to Cabarrus County, $10 million to Mecklenburg County. I don't know all the different counties.
We have 100 counties just in North Carolina.
Yeah. And so if they're not following these VAWA rules, like, that's definitely not following a VAWA rule. If you're the judge that sat on stand when my ex-husband threatened to kill me on stand, then you were the same judge, Judge Nathaniel Knutz, that also ordered me to pay him $70,000. So you're obviously not following the VAWA rules. So that $6 million should be returned to us.
And now
the victims.
In my first case, I had Gary Henderson in Mecklenburg County, and I had restraining orders. I had, gone to him and requested. I said, I'm dealing with these different issues. Both these men are doing different things to me. I need help. Like, I need someone with some domestic violence training. He said, well, I've had all the training. I'm the judge in this courthouse that's the professional in domestic violence.
But
yet
Gary Henderson is the #1 person putting women in jail right now in Mecklenburg County.
To our knowledge.
And
without all the data,
I just
we
was
need
at
more
a
data
case
for that too.
where the man has a 1,000-page rap record. His mother has actually murdered someone, and he didn't want to bring into court that the child should not be around the person that murdered someone, or the 1,000-page rap record even mattered, where recent things like assault on females was in the rap record. And he puts the mother in jail for 12 days for not giving the child to the father. But I had personally gone with her to exchanges, videotaped that this father is not showing up. He doesn't show up. So she goes to jail when he doesn't show up. Like, he's not even showing up to get the child, has never even attempted to follow the order,
and that's
but
another
put her in
common
jail.
thing. And the courts want to, and then they'll create for example, you can file for contempt and then it's ignored. But then when there's actually, you're requesting to have things heard, the courts will drag and prolong these things for months and months, and then you don't know, like, why is there no result?
If they keep dragging it out, you'll just give up. But
your kids age out.
Moms don't give up. I mean, they don't give up. Like, it doesn't.
So it's very important, I think, to address right now, for as long as we've been doing this, the moms being arrested that have, like, because of family court, essentially. And they've not done anything as far, they haven't heard anyone, they haven't, in a lot of the cases, it's poverty. People are either too poor to represent them, or too poor to file to get an attorney when fraudulent charges have been put against them. So I think right now, there's a mom in Oklahoma in jail. We have one in San Diego. I think there's another one in Utah. And I know there's some more. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but there's several moms in jail right now based on false claims.
At extended periods of time, like 30, 60, 90 days or longer. One girl from North Carolina was in jail for saying "I love you" to her kids on the beach. Essentially the same kind of thing, saying there was a restraining order. That the dad took her to the beach knowing she's going to be there. Like, took her to the beach where she goes and her family goes, walks by with the children. She says "I love you" to the children, and she goes to jail. Like, same kind of thing happened with, like, Lisa Pennington in Charlotte, North Carolina. One time she would drive the same way home from work, and there was, like, this little park in the middle. Her kids never went to that park. The guy had the kids in the park next to where her car was going to be driving by intentionally, and then she got in trouble or went to jail over seeing her kids when she wasn't supposed to see the kids, when he set the kids up to be there.
And therein lies the problem, because the kids are being victimized by the system when they just want to see their mom and dad, and they don't understand why can't they see their mom, or why, in my case, after they first kidnapped my youngest, legally kidnapped her, they were trying to make me be supervised. Well, my child had been with me since birth, and they told her, the guardian ad litem, Christine Farrell, got down on my daughter's face and said, now, if you tell mommy anything that's happening at daddy's house, you'll never get to see your mommy again. And I recorded the entire conversation. And at this point, she was 4. She had just turned 4 years old. So the system is putting these people in place, such as guardian ad litems or these attorneys, and telling the kids at these young ages, you can't talk to your parents. The parents that are, doing nothing wrong, or that have, the courts are dragging these processes on and not effectively allowing evidence to be presented. Now, I was told by Mecklenburg County's DA about 8